My name is Crystal Williams. I'm 30 years old, and I thought my husband would protect our family during our most vulnerable moment until he looked at me in the hospital bed and said, "Crystal is too emotional about money." What happened next proved that while I was in labor bringing our daughter into the world, my husband was signing documents to sell our family home without my knowledge, leaving us homeless with a newborn because he thought I was too weak to handle financial decisions. Before I tell you how one phone call from our real estate agent changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage, and how property records exposed a fraudulent sale so illegal it sent my husband to jail, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how 3 words, "sale is illegal," silenced my husband and made him realize he had just committed federal fraud against the mother of his child. Let me take you back to where this story really begins. My husband Marcus and I had been married for 4 years and were excitedly preparing for the birth of our first child. We owned a beautiful 3-bedroom house in a safe neighborhood, the perfect place to raise our daughter Emma, who was due any day. I work as an accountant for a mid-sized firm, and Marcus works in sales. Together, we had built a stable, comfortable life, and were looking forward to becoming parents and creating a loving home for our growing family. The house meant everything to me. We had spent 3 years saving for the down payment, carefully chosen the neighborhood for its excellent schools and family-friendly atmosphere, and invested time and money in making it perfect for our future children. "This house is going to be filled with Emma's laughter," I would say to Marcus as we prepared the nursery. "I can already imagine her taking her first steps in the living room." Marcus always agreed enthusiastically. "We're going to create so many memories here," he would reply. "This is our forever home." But what I didn't know was that Marcus had been struggling with gambling debts that he had hidden from me throughout our marriage. While I thought we were financially stable and preparing for parenthood, Marcus owed over 80,000 to various creditors and was facing increasing pressure to pay. Rather than tell me about the debt or ask for help managing our finances, which, as an accountant, I was certainly qualified to do, the Marcus had decided to handle the situation by selling our house without my knowledge. His plan was to sell the house while I was giving birth, when I would be too distracted and vulnerable to stop him. He thought he could present me with a completed sale and convince me it was the best solution for our family's financial problems. On Tuesday morning, March 15th, I woke up with strong contractions that indicated Emma was ready to be born. Marcus drove me to the hospital, and by noon, I was in active labor. "I'm so excited to meet our daughter," I told Marcus between contractions. "I can't wait to bring her home to the nursery we prepared." "Me too," Marcus replied, but I noticed he seemed distracted and kept checking his phone throughout my labor. At the time, I assumed his nervousness was normal first-time father anxiety. I had no idea he was coordinating the sale of our house while I was giving birth to our child. Emma was born at 6:47 p.m. after 14 hours of labor. She was perfect, healthy, beautiful, and absolutely precious. Holding her for the first time was the most incredible moment of my life. "She's perfect," Marcus said, tears in his eyes as he held Emma. "I love you both so much." I felt overwhelmed with happiness and gratitude. We were a family now, and I couldn't wait to take Emma home to the nursery we had prepared with so much love and anticipation. But the next morning, while I was still in the hospital recovering from childbirth and bonding with Emma, Marcus made a comment that should have been a warning sign. "Crystal, we need to talk about some financial decisions I had to make," he said carefully. "What kind of financial decisions?" I asked, focused on feeding Emma and still exhausted from labor. "Some opportunities came up that required quick action," Marcus replied vaguely. "Marcus, I just gave birth yesterday," I said. "Can we discuss finances when we get home? I want to focus on Emma right now." "Of course," Marcus agreed. "We'll talk about everything once you're feeling better." I was too tired and overwhelmed with new motherhood to press for details about what Marcus meant by financial decisions and opportunities. We were discharged from the hospital Thursday afternoon, and I was excited to bring Emma home for the first time. I had been imagining this moment for months, carrying our daughter across the threshold of our house, showing her the nursery we had prepared, and beginning our life as a family in the home we loved. But when we arrived at our house, there was a sold sign in the front yard. I stared at the sign in confusion, assuming it was some kind of mistake or that it had been placed in the wrong yard. "Marcus, why is there a sold sign in our yard?" I asked. Marcus took a deep breath before answering. Crystal, I sold the house. I felt like the world had stopped spinning. You did what? I sold our house, Marcus repeated. While you were in labor, I completed the sale to cover some debts we had. What debts? I demanded, my voice rising despite Emma sleeping in my arms. I've been dealing with some financial issues that you didn't know about, Marcus explained. I owed money that had to be paid immediately, and selling the house was the only solution. I was shaking with shock and anger as I processed what Marcus was telling me. You sold our house, our family home, while I was giving birth to our daughter? I asked in disbelief. I did what I had to do to protect our family, Marcus replied defensively. Protect our family? You made us homeless. We have a newborn baby and nowhere to live. We can rent an apartment, Marcus said dismissively. The house was just a financial burden anyway. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The house that represented our stability, our dreams, and our child's future had been sold without my knowledge, while I was in the most vulnerable state of my life. Marcus, my name is on the deed, I said, suddenly realizing a crucial legal issue. You can't sell a house without both owners signing the documents. Marcus looked uncomfortable. I handled the paperwork. What does that mean? I pressed. It means I signed your name on the documents, Marcus admitted. The full horror of what Marcus had done was becoming clear. Not only had he sold our house without my consent, but he had forged my signature on legal documents to complete the sale. You forged my signature? I asked, barely able to speak. I knew you would be too emotional to make rational decisions, Marcus replied. You were in labor. I had to act quickly to resolve our financial problems. Too emotional to make rational decisions about selling my own house? Crystal, you're an accountant, but you don't understand how serious these debts were, Marcus said condescendingly. I had to make the hard choices to protect us. I was holding our one-day-old daughter while learning that my husband had committed fraud to sell our home and leave us homeless. The betrayal was so complete and so devastating that I could barely process it. Where are we supposed to live? I asked. I found us a rental apartment, Marcus replied. It's smaller, but it's what we can afford now. What we can afford now that you gambled away our house money. I didn't gamble it away, Marcus protested. I used it to pay off debts that would have destroyed our credit. Debts from what, Marcus? Marcus couldn't answer that question directly, because answering it would require admitting the extent of his gambling addiction and financial deception. That evening, I called the real estate agent whose name was on the sold sign to try to understand exactly what had happened to our house. Miss Williams, this is Janet Morrison from Morrison Real Estate, the agent said when she returned my call. I wanted to follow up on the sale of your property on Maple Street. Miss Morrison, I need to understand exactly what happened with that sale, I said. Your husband completed the sale yesterday while you were in the hospital, Janet explained. He said you were having complications with childbirth and had asked him to handle the closing documents. Miss Morrison, I never authorized the sale of our house, I said clearly. My husband sold our house without my permission while I was giving birth. There was a long pause on the phone. Miss Williams, are you saying that you didn't consent to the sale? Janet asked carefully. I'm saying that I knew nothing about any sale until I came home from the hospital and saw the sold sign in our yard. But both owners signed the closing documents, Janet said, sounding confused. My husband forged my signature, I explained. I never signed anything because I never agreed to sell our house. Janet's tone immediately became more serious. Miss Williams, if your signature was forged, then the sale is illegal. This is a very serious situation. What does that mean for the sale? I asked. It means that the property transfer is invalid, Janet replied. A house cannot be legally sold without the consent and signatures of all owners on the deed. Janet continued, Miss Williams, I need to report this to my broker immediately. If your husband committed signature fraud to complete this sale, we're looking at criminal charges and avoided real estate transaction. The next morning, Janet called me with more information about the legal implications of what Marcus had done. Miss Williams, I've spoken with my broker and our legal counsel, Janet said. The sale of your house is completely invalid due to the forged signature. What happens now? I asked. We're voiding the entire transaction, Janet explained. The buyers will get their money back, and you retain ownership of your house. And what happens to Marcus? That's a law enforcement matter, Janet replied. Real estate fraud and signature forgery are serious crimes. My broker is required to report this to the authorities. I felt relief that our house would be returned to us. But I also felt devastated that Marcus had committed crimes that would likely result in his arrest. Miss Williams, there's something else you should know, Janet continued. When we investigated the transaction, we discovered that your husband didn't just forge your signature. He also provided false information about your consent and lied about your medical condition to rush the sale through. What kind of false information? He told us that you were having serious childbirth complications and might not survive, and that you had given him power of attorney to handle all financial matters in case something happened to you. The cruelty of Marcus's lies was breathtaking. He had used my childbirth, the birth of our daughter, as a cover story to justify selling our house through fraud. He told people I might die in childbirth so he could steal our house? I asked in disbelief. That appears to be what happened, Janet confirmed. He created a false emergency to justify forging your signature and rushing through the sale. 2 days later, while I was still adjusting to life with a newborn, police officers came to our door with an arrest warrant for Marcus. Marcus Williams, you're under arrest for real estate fraud, signature forgery, and filing false documents, the officer announced. Marcus was handcuffed and taken away while Emma and I watched from our living room, the living room in the house he had tried to steal from us. Mommy, why are the police taking Daddy? Emma would ask years later when she was old enough to understand. For now, she was too young to comprehend that her father had committed crimes against her and me. The legal proceedings that followed revealed the full extent of Marcus's deception and financial crimes. During the investigation, prosecutors discovered that Marcus owed over 80 to various creditors, primarily from sports gambling debts he had accumulated over 3 years of our marriage. Mr. Williams had been living a double life, the prosecutor explained during the court proceedings. While his wife believed they were financially stable and preparing for their child's birth, he was actually deeply in debt from gambling addiction. Rather than seek help or disclose his financial problems to his wife, Mr. Williams chose to commit fraud by selling their family home without her knowledge or consent. The judge was particularly harsh in his sentencing remarks. Mr. Williams committed these crimes against his own wife while she was giving birth to their child, Judge Martinez said during sentencing. He exploited her most vulnerable moment to steal her home and leave his newborn daughter homeless. This level of betrayal against one's own family, combined with the serious nature of real estate fraud, requires significant consequences. Marcus was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for real estate fraud, signature forgery, and filing false documents. He was also required to pay restitution for all legal costs and damages caused by the fraudulent sale. But the most satisfying part of the justice system's response came when I learned about the additional consequences Marcus faced. Mrs. Williams, you should know that your husband's actions have had broader consequences, my attorney informed me. The real estate agency has filed additional charges for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. What does that mean? It means that Marcus not only committed crimes against you, but he also defrauded the buyers, the real estate agency, and the mortgage company by providing false information to complete the sale. The total financial damages from his fraud exceed 300, which elevates the charges to federal offenses with much harsher penalties. Marcus's attempt to solve his 80 gambling debt by selling our house had resulted in 300 in legal damages and a federal prison sentence. During the court proceedings, I also learned disturbing details about how Marcus had planned and executed his fraud. Phone records showed that Marcus had been planning to sell the house for weeks before I went into labor. He had contacted real estate agents, researched rapid sale procedures, and prepared forged documents in advance. This wasn't a desperate, last-minute decision, the prosecutor explained. Mr. Williams had been planning to commit fraud against his wife for weeks, waiting for an opportunity when she would be too vulnerable to stop him. He deliberately chose to execute his plan while she was giving birth, believing that she would be too distracted and physically unable to prevent the sale. The premeditation made Marcus's crimes even more severe and reinforced the judge's harsh sentence. 6 months later, Emma and I were living peacefully in our home, the home that Marcus had tried to steal from us, but which had been legally restored to my ownership. I filed for divorce while Marcus was in prison, and I was awarded full custody of Emma along with all marital assets, including the house. The most important lesson I learned from this experience is that financial deception in marriage often escalates to more serious crimes when the deceptive partner feels cornered. Marcus's gambling addiction and debt problems could have been addressed through honest communication and professional help, but his choice to handle the situation through fraud and theft revealed a level of selfishness and criminality that made him unfit to be a husband and father. I also learned that the legal system provides strong protections against real estate fraud, even when committed by spouses against each other. The woman whose husband said she was too emotional about money learned that federal law doesn't distinguish between fraud committed by strangers and fraud committed by family members, and that forging a wife's signature on real estate documents will send you to federal prison. And the husband who thought he could sell his family's home while his wife gave birth learned that real estate fraud carries serious consequences, especially when it's committed against a newborn baby's mother during childbirth. Today, Emma and I live in the house that represents our security, stability, and future. The house that Marcus tried to steal from us is now legally protected in a trust that ensures Emma's inheritance and our family's housing security. Marcus will be released from federal prison in 2 years, but he will have no claim to our house, no custody of Emma, and no role in the life we've built without him. Sometimes the most expensive mistakes are the ones that seem designed to solve financial problems but actually destroy families and result in federal prison sentences. Have you ever discovered that a spouse was hiding major financial problems from you? How do you protect yourself from people who would exploit your most vulnerable moments? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about marriage betrayal, financial fraud, and learning that some trust violations carry federal criminal consequences.